And 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me, everyone? Welcome to this stream. We're going to try doing something different today. It's going to be about 30 to 40 minutes stream where I'm going to be covering one specific topic, and I'm going to answer some questions at the end with relation to the topic. I'm going to try to see if this format works. If it works, if you're going to like it, then we're going to do more of this. So more content for you. But the reason I'm doing this today is because I kind of got pretty late home, so I didn't have the time to really make the normal video. So that one is coming hopefully tomorrow. Otherwise, we're going to be talking today about Zelensky's victory plan, and we're going to talk about what it means. We're going to talk about what's the reaction to it, and we're going to talk about if it's realistic or not. So please, by starting, please join me in saying huge thanks to the moderating team, because without the moderating team, these streams, live streams, the chats, our community would not be possible. They are great. They're doing so much for this channel's growth. But let's start. So Zelensky's victory plan is a thing that he presented just recently, and that thing made certain waves. And waves were kind of large. Now, it's been speculated what's inside the victory plan. From what we've heard Zelensky state, there are about 8 points to this plan. The plan focuses on the high-level strategic approach. So when people are stating that this plan doesn't deliver you from A to B and doesn't explain every single step, that's not what a big strategic plan should do. Like, big strategic plan should just kind of outline where you are right now and where you would want to be in a realistic scenario, something that is hopefully achievable. So in that sense, the plan is what it's supposed to be. All of the details can be detailed in lower level documents. That's just how normal. Well, I'm judging by my corporate experience, but I'm guessing the statecraft works in hopefully similar fashion. Otherwise, if this is the level of statecraft discussions, then I'm a little bit worried about how this world works. Anyway, so this plan consists of 8 points. The 5 points that are open, we're going to be talking about. And then there is the 3 hidden points. One of the hidden points, we actually know what it contains, and that's the one I'm going to start with. So the hidden point that we definitely know for sure is the location and list of targets inside Russia that Ukraine would like to either engage by long-range strikes, or they would be willing to go and, for example, capture to secure Ukrainian borders. So it's a supplemental annex to one of the other key points in the plan. Let's now, after we talked about the secret part of it, now everyone knows the secret. That's it. You can end this video. Obviously not. So let's start talking about the meat and potatoes of the whole plan and the 5 points that we definitely know and that Zelensky presented. And I'm going to present the points, and then I'm going to start talking about each of these points. Point number 1 of the plan is Ukraine is invited to NATO. And we must be very clear what is defined here. Zelensky underscored that it is about invitation to NATO. It is not about joining NATO. He very specifically, in his speech to Verkhovna Rada, the main kind of legislative body in Ukraine, he stated that it is about countries extending their positions, showing where they are, rather than actual joining to NATO, because so far they've gotten a lot of really good words and of encouragement that their path is supposed to be NATO, but it's time to kind of deliver on those words and basically extend the invitation. You don't need to accept us right away, because acceptance process to the NATO is quite lengthy, but we're going to talk about it a bit later. So second one, the approval for Ukraine to do things that the Allies deemed not very nice. Specifically talks about striking military targets inside Russia an approval for Ukrainian activity inside Russia by securing the border of Ukraine and creating this buffer state in between Russia and Ukraine. So essentially extending the operations sort of like Kursk to other parts and regions of Russia. Part number 3 is the containment package. This is the part that was referenced by the journalist and so on. This is just where Zelensky states that you must provide us the amount of weapons that is necessary to not only defend Russia, but also so we are protected long term. This is the, so to say, big request. This is where Zelensky states, for this, the core of the plan, to work, we need weapons, and this is, I think it was expected in any kind of scenario of the plan, and this is exactly what this is talking about. Number 4 is a very interesting one. So number 4 and number 5, contradictory to the previous 3 points, is instead of Ukraine asking something from the allies, the 4 and 5 is actually Ukraine offering something to the allies. The part number 4 states, we have a lot of resources and we would be willing to share these resources with you. So it states that Ukraine has a lot of strategic resources that are very relevant for European Union, for the United States. And basically, with no uncertain terms, Zelensky is stating, if you protect us now, we will give you the ability to exploit these resources for your benefits in the future. I think it's great, and we're going to again talk about it a bit later, but this is the first offer of Ukraine to the Western Alliance. So it's not about only Ukraine asking for something, it's also about what Ukraine can offer to the table. And then part number 5 is the protection of Europe by the Ukrainian armed forces. Zelensky basically stated that Ukrainian military right now is probably one of the most capable, if not the most capable militaries in the world. And Zelensky is offering not only to the European Union, but I think it's more even targeted to the United States, and specifically MAGA Republicans, or just generally Republicans that are interested in reducing the presence of Ukraine in other countries. He's saying that a lot of defensive activities that US is doing in Europe could be instead taken by the Ukraine. So instead of US sending troops to defend certain countries, Ukraine can use their capable and experienced military to secure the borders of the countries, to secure bases and everything else. I think, again, it's a very good plan, and it works very well into the narrative that US should not be, like, not the, like, how do I put it? Not the narrative that I support, but the narrative that exists in the United States, that US should spend less resources in securing Europe and focusing more on some other areas where US presence is more relevant as they see fit. And Zelensky is stating essentially that we can work in this paradigm and we actually can substitute your presence in Europe without undermining the security of Europe. And I think that is very, very good. So that's the 5 plans. Sorry. So that's the 5 points of the plan. And I think they're good. I think they're pretty good. The unfortunate problem is that it's obviously completely unrealistic. There is about 0 chances in this world that this victory plan is going to be accepted from the get-go by the European Union and United States. But I think that was pretty much the point of the plan, because Zelensky, Ukraine, they were fed a lot of promises, a lot of nice words of support, and they were asked to do so much without actually coming through. So with this plan, I believe Zelensky very strongly sends a ball towards the court of United States and the European Union and other countries also of the Western Alliance. And he basically states that this is now up to you to show that you mean when you state that you actually support Ukraine. I believe that right now he really, especially with the point number one, he really is putting a lot of pressure on specifically parties like Scholz, because there has been like a lot of talks about Ukrainian accession to NATO. Some of people even were speculating about whether Ukraine should just join NATO while giving certain occupied territories to Russia. Well, even if we're talking about that kind of paradigm, which I don't support that, but even if we try to kind of tackle that peacenik narrative that should go die in a ditch, then even in that narrative, invitation to NATO makes sense then. Because how can we even start discussing whether Ukraine should or should not give certain territories to Russia to stop this conflict if invitation to NATO is not even on the table? So I think it's a very strong message, and it puts a lot of pressure on the Western powers on whether their rhetoric is actual, whether their rhetoric has the substance, or it's just a lot of really cheerful, nice words and a lot of hot air that they're producing. And this is good. I think it's good, and we will see how it will develop. Right now, it's created a lot of fuss. The initial reaction, as expected, was obviously no inclusion of Ukraine in NATO, but this is the work of diplomacy. And I think the real challenge and the real answer to this question will not come before the November election. I truly believe that Joe Biden right now, he is just in a paradigm that he wants to freeze everything, all the interactions that could potentially hinder somehow the possibility of Kamala Harris actually winning the election, so he will not be acting in any kind of disrupting activities until the election's over. I think some activity might happen after Kamala wins and after after Joe Biden goes into the, what is it called, the lame duck period, I believe it is called. And during that period, Joe will have kind of some actions that he can take that will just go into his legacy, so to sign off. So we will see about that, but I wouldn't expect the answer to this point before the 5th of November. And I think it's going to be interesting to see mostly what we should follow, the dynamics of selling this plan poorly, where on misrepresenting, stating that Ukraine cannot be in NATO while it's war because this is a false narrative, compared to what Ukraine actually want and what Ukrainian statement actually is we just do the official invitation. We still don't complete the process for Ukraine until it finishes the war. So that's the point number one. Point number two is about approval for Ukrainian actions. This is, again, it's very good that this is now being, basically Zelensky is openly challenging the statements that we are here with Ukraine to win. To put this plan in simple terms, Zelensky is saying, you are stating that you want me to win, let me win. This is how I want to win, so you need to approve it. First and foremost, I know there's been like a lot of bad news in recent times, but I have some information and some already long-running suspicion that Ukraine has a lot of power stored and prepared for certain activities. I'm not talking about it because I don't want to raise the hype bar, right? But all in all, like, there is a world and there is a possibility in which Ukraine will able to utilize a lot of that hidden resource to achieve success on the battlefield against Russia. But to achieve that battlefield, they need the clarity from the allies that they can fight the war their own way. Right? We hear a lot about the fact that Israel should reconsider how they're fighting the war. And again, I'm not going to go into Israel Palestine conflict. This is not the point of the channel. I have my opinion, but I'm keeping it to myself because I'm single-mindedly focused on Ukraine. But right now, there is a lot of discussion about how Israel should wage this war. And what is not happening is there is no discussion about how Ukraine should wage this war. There is just some kind of unspoken agreement that there are certain things that just Ukraine is not allowed to do. And it is absolutely silly, because what Ukraine is asking is to fight against the Russian military in a way that any other country would fight against any other military. We're not talking about capturing Russian territories for no reason. We've seen already that even with captured Russian territories, Ukrainians are, they're like knights in white shining armor, because any military that I've asked to, that I talked to, and he says, like, the way that Ukrainians are acting inside of Kursk region with the civilians and representatives of the enemy state is like beyond chivalrous. Like, it's like the lengths that Ukrainian command go to prevent any kind of looting, shooting, oh my God, I don't even know, like, to prevent stealing by the Ukrainian armed forces, which are actually almost like cores of a lot of the militaries in the world. Look at the wars all across the world, how the militaries act against their opponents when they capture some of that opponent's property. And you will clearly understand what I mean. The way that Ukrainians are acting is like highest level of chivalrous. It's incredible. The problem with that is that because Ukrainians are being such a good guys, they are seeing that seemingly the Western powers are just abusing that they're the good guys and saying, well, if you're so good, you should also not target the long-range military targets in Russia, and you should also not attack Russia where they don't expect. You should only fight Russia head-to-head in a position of weakness. And I think basically the second point, in the same sense that the first point calls out the bullshit of the political statements, the second point calls out the bullshit of the military statements. So when there are statements and documents signed about Ukrainian victory, Ukraine is saying, if you are continuously saying that you're supporting Ukrainian victory, then you need to support the Ukrainian victory. Support it. And this is actual dilemma for a lot of the Western powers. As I explained many times, there is a lot of politicians that really want to go back to February 2022. They really want to go to the world where this war never happened, even despite the fact that Ukraine was fighting for over 8 years in Donbass, with Russian invasion. But that was okay, that didn't really worry anyone. Now it's kind of worrying a little bit people, so they moved a bit. But they're seeing that there is potentially a prospect of normalization in relationship with Russia, and they don't care like that Ukrainians died and so on. They see, like a lot of them are seeing Ukrainians as some kind of a second-rate citizens. Well, it's like they're not even citizens, like second-rate, third-class people that are just doing a good job, and I'm going to leave them some tips instead of like actual investment and a partner alliance. And this is where Ukraine is basically stating, if you are indeed stating that we are a partner in this, in your protection and your security, then act so. It doesn't require you to do anything. It only requires the political statement on the fact that Ukraine can use the weapons that already been provided the way that Ukraine see fit, and the way that they can fight Russia the way that they say fit, instead of the politicians always expressing concerns and tying the hands behind Ukraine's back. Point number 3, containment package against Russia. I think this is very, very clear. There's been many discussions, and all in all, this point is the simplest one. Ukraine needs weapons to win. Give the weapons. Give the weapons in sufficient quantity for Ukraine to win. That is the package that is both simple to understand, but also it's harder to track because there's a lot of because a lot of these deliveries that Ukraine are not really publicly stated what is being delivered, so we don't know how much is delivered at all. A lot of the packages are hidden, so there is a lot of variability, but it's more about that Ukraine is just requiring the allies to deliver weapons on a constant basis and continue to do so. Number 4, protection of Ukrainian resources. I think this is the strongest point, to be honest, because Ukraine needs to find new angles of approach. And I think buying into the greed and ambition of a lot of the politicians and a lot of the people that really want to profiteer from Ukraine or post-Ukraine, I think it's reasonable. I know it sounds a little bit nasty. No one wants to trade their land off, essentially. Like, you wouldn't want to, like, if there would be like a burglar that is with a weapon that broke into your apartment and you have like 3 rooms in your apartment, you wouldn't want to give up one of the rooms just for that burglar to be evicted, right? Because this is rightfully your apartment. But I think this shows the reasonability of Zelensky and understanding that we cannot just ask for weapons and everything from the allies, and that there's a lot of voices that want to say no to further support for Ukraine. So I think increasing incentive to invest into Ukraine, I just think it's totally reasonable and, given the situation, understandable. And it's very important also for EU, because a lot of the resources that are not even available in the European Union could be easily available in the European Union if Ukraine is invited to join the European Union and is going to become a member of the European Union, which I don't doubt at all. And that would be very, very good. So, good plan. I approve. There needs to be more of this. I think resources is a good start, but I think there should be more, and there should be more lucrative and more concrete offers on the table, what Ukraine can offer. It's just the unfortunate situation with the way that the situation has developed. And then number 5, protection of the European continent by Ukraine. This one it's a pure diplomatic step, because let's be very clear, right? If Russia is defeated in Europe, there is not really going to be a threat in Europe anymore. Okay? I think that's, you understand this, I understand this. There is no other threat in Europe besides Russia. Okay? So that's why this move is kind of good. That it proposes some kind of a leeway and some of the talkative arguments. So I feel that this point is very much dependent on how well the diplomacy of Ukraine works. Again, it's one of those points where I think there is a lot of push and pull about how far or how little this point might go. But I think if we look at this like with the previous point where I said like what can Ukraine offer, I think this is a good continuation. And I would hope Ukraine will propose more points like this about what Ukraine will be able to offer concretely to benefit the alliance. And that's like just a good sales practice to just propose something that is really needed by one of your customers. So US has a lot of voices that are stating that they should decrease the presence in Europe to not put US men on the ground. Great. There we go. Ukraine is offering to do so. So that's the 5 points. I think the plan is good. I don't expect this plan to be approved. Majority of this needs to be as a talking point, and I'm really happy with what Zelensky has stated after that. Zelensky started speculating that essentially this plan is there for Ukraine to win, and for the Western powers that were stating that Ukraine wants to win is there, but we're also maybe somehow in the future, if this is not possible, if NATO cannot protect us, then maybe the nuclear weapons can. And that riled up the politicians and all of these people that want to go back in the 2022, all of these people that want to pretend that the most brutal war since the Second World War in Europe never happened, that all of the killings, torture with Russia never happened, that supposedly Russia is somewhat of a reasonable state that can be negotiated with, and even they sign some kind of agreement that will not be better than the toilet paper. All of that aside, that really riled up. I've talked about a lot that we should, and on this channel for the people in my audience, and I'm going to be preaching to a choir here, that we cannot allow for fear to drive our decision making. Because if we start allowing the fear to drive our decision making, we're going to end up in a very dark place. We're going to end up beaten and alone with no friends and nobody there to come for our rescue. And that is exactly what's been happening in a lot of the European politicians. Whether their fears of the far right rising their head against the establishment, whether it's fear against Putin and nuclear weapons that will eliminate the world, it's a lot of cowards. The unfortunate truth is that we guys in Europe and other places as well, we have elected a lot of cowards in our political power. It's not by choice. We didn't know. It's just we had nothing to compare it to, right? Because we were so dependent on the rhetoric, we bought in a lot of these cowards talking really, really nice and sweet about how they will win and how they will make our countries better. But in reality, when now we see that push come to shove, we talk a lot about Olaf Scholz being the wrong person in a wrong job at the wrong time. But it's true for many, many politicians and bureaucrats in all positions of power, even throughout Europe and United States. Take Jake Sullivan, for example. It is incredible that we are living in a world where all of our values can be shit on. That the butt of the joke for many decades, the North Korea, suddenly invades a sovereign European nation, and there is like dead silence in the media or political space about it, like it's not a big deal. And it's all because there is a bunch of cowards that cannot look in the eye and that they are not worth even a slightest part of the finger of Zelensky. They are so afraid about any kind of change in the world. They're afraid to be strong. They're afraid to show the dominance. It's actually paradoxical that we, the Western Alliance, the most resource intense, the most capable military and economical power that has ever existed, the output that we can get can barely approach half of what the North Korea, the butt of the joke of the world that was there for decades, is able to produce for Russia. I'm talking about artillery shells, but it's about everything else. It's also about the political power. It's about resolve. It's about ability to make change. There is a lot of hot air in our politician miss, and when Zelensky stated that he's gonna be considering nuclear weapons, suddenly all of their fear sensors, started lighting up. I was like, oh, nuclear, afraid, be afraid. If Ukraine goes nuclear war, everyone's get destroyed. That's the level of their internal monologue, right? There is no logic there. There is no decision making. There is only fear. And that is what I want us all to see. I want you, for first and foremost, to note in your governments who is the most feared one, who is going to be talking about, oh, Ukraine is thinking nuclear weapons, we should prevent Ukraine nuclear weapons. And Zelensky clarified that he didn't say anything about nuclear weapons, that it was just something that he talked about. But I think this is a good angle, and I'm hoping Zelensky will use more of these rhetorical devices, because it's clearly that appealing to the consciousness for these cowards work to a certain extent. Then Zelensky tried to appeal to population. Population pressure worked to a certain extent, but now population pressure kind of gave way a little bit. So now these cowards are suddenly, oh, okay, no more pressure. And I think now taking an angle of well then, how about us threatening you, what Russia has been doing? And I think it's an interesting approach. I think it might work, and I think Zelensky is onto something here. So we'll see how it go. So that was the discussion about the Zelensky's plan. So do you have, guys, any question about the topic? And then in the meantime, while you write questions, I'm gonna look them through. I want to present something. So we talked long and extensively that this channel is going to support Ukraine as much as possible until victory, and we're going to continue to do so. We're starting a new campaign with the NAFO 69 Sniffing Brigade. Absolutely trusted partner. They have been pulling through for 7 times already, and this is our 8th campaign. It's very, very ambitious. We're trying to aim for over $100,000. I'm not expecting this to be easy or fast, but it's a campaign that we started. Many brigades. There's going to be 3 NAFO trucks. There's going to be I don't know what Autel 4N is, but you can Google that. There's some drones. So good stuff. A lot of really, really important things. Some night vision drones, and there's the brigades that will be in units that made their statements, and I will be posting these statements in the videos to come, but we're going to be helping supplying them with the weapons and ammunition, and obviously you can get some of the nice patches. There is the NAFO patch for about Kursk is Ukraine, and then there is the Ukraine Matters patch with the F-16 and just with some text if you prefer simplicity. All right, let me see your questions. Canada is asking, how can we help with Ukraine victory plans? Well, I talked about the politicians. I talked about that there has been some political pressure of politicians, and that political pressure needs to be raised again. So my point is that we should use the Zelensky's plan as a driver to reach out to our politicians and ask them to support the plan and clarify specifically on the point of NATO, on the second point of allowing Ukraine to do what Ukraine can do, and finally that we should support Ukraine with additional weapons and equipment and so on. So I think it's a good point to, again, let us know that there is still a lot of people that support Ukraine, and we are here and we are hearing Zelensky. All right. Let's see if you have any more questions. Okay. How many 155mm shells can EU produce yearly now towards the end of 2024? And this is actually part of the second point of third point of Zelensky's plan. He stated that there should be additional investment into Ukrainian production. He's stating that not only they need to supply as much as they can, but the investment into Ukrainian production of equipment should be there. So again, in Europe, you know it, I know it, we are super fucking rich. Okay, we have a lot of money, and most importantly, we almost can create that money out of the thin air. You know how bankers work, right? We talk a lot of shit about bankers because they're the most despicable people. Because every time there is a crisis, they will create some kind of bullshit program that will create money from thin air, and then they will stuff their pockets full of that money. Yes, some of that will help us resolve that crisis. For example, COVID, they made like 800,000 billion euro in loans. And there was like, okay, do we care? I was like, not really, but it helped us prevent a COVID crisis. We need to make sure that Ukraine is perceived the same. It's like, so what I think is that a lot of different terms about the bankers that I can tell. And so these bankers can actually, for once, not only fill their pockets with another bullshit program, but also make that program to support Ukraine. It would actually be quite nice. Yes. All right. Yes, I already talked extensively about Ukraine being a member of NATO. That's not what Zelensky proposed. That is not the plan. That is not what we discussed here. Watch the video from the beginning. All right, lovely. So thank you so much for joining me on this very short stream. Again, new type of content. Tell me in the comment section, because this is going to be like a video, if you like it or not. And if you did, if there's going to be popular, I'm going to do more of these shorter videos. Again, I hope the normal video update will be coming tomorrow. Love you. Slava Ukraini. Trust in Ukrainian armed forces and for the victory of Ukraine. I'll see you next time.